cutter Canadian cards don't know anything about professional wrestling. And I'm telling you right now, they never been there. They don't know how it run. They don't even know what a power drive, what a drop kick is, what a backdrop is. They don't know nothing about professional wrestling. But you know, the Birdman know all about it. The Birdman can tell you about professional wrestling. Well, wrestling fans, you seen the Birdman in action. You seen me come off on the top rope and land, drop kick somebody and land on their feet. Does they know anything about that? No, they do not.
What is going on, you guys? It's that time again for another Squared Circle chat. We absolutely had a blast on the last one, and the reception was so well. Mike and I thought we would just keep going with this. So the particular topic in this video was definitely inspired by one of y'all's ideas from the last one. So we'll get to that here in a little bit, but I believe Mike had something that kind of crossed his mind that he wanted to talk about first.
Yeah, happy to be on here again, Garrett. This is, I think, the first time I think we both agree we had a blast with it and want to keep it going. The one thing that you and I talked about, prior to setting up this video was the fact that, so much has changed in the wrestling game. Like all kinds of sports change over time. I can go with hockey. They used to use straight sticks. Now they're curved. There's all kinds of things. But the one thing I noticed, I've been watching a lot of older wrestling videos. If you look back from the 50s to the 60s, getting into the 70s and the 80s, the gimmick part of it has really evolved as the main center stage of the wrestling entertainment industry. I mean, you could look back in the 1950s and literally you could see guys who were, Joe Smith, and they just had a jacket on and the wrestling trunks, and they were just, they get announced and, hey, I'm here to wrestle. And it was all about the technique. It was all about technique. There was really not a lot of showmanship. And I think that's kind of evolved. And I know I started to see it a lot more in the 70s, and obviously in the 80s, it really blew up. But how about yourself? Because you watched it at a later time. And I know for you, it may have been the gimmicks were probably already there, but you may have seen some difference too.
Well, I got in, I would say I started watching wrestling in the very, very late 80s. I'm talking like 88, 89, and then the early 90s. So that's like prime time getting into the Attitude Era of wrestling. And man, in my opinion, the Attitude Era was just saturated in a good way, in my mind, in a good way with freaking gimmicks. Like that's all it was. So I'm not too familiar with any of the wrestling from the 60s or the 70s that you were talking about.
Right.
But definitely, I would almost say from what I remember, the Attitude Era, I would say that I almost think the gimmicks aren't as crazy as they used to be. I mean, there's still a storyline. Like we touched on in the last video, like talking about Isaac Yankem, there was a freaking dentist, and there's an IRS, a tax guy, and there's all these crazy occupation gimmicks.
Almost an occupation for every wrestler, right?
I would say absolutely.
Yeah.
And then nowadays you have guys like Damian Mysterio. Well, he's the son of Rey Mysterio.
Right.
And that is his gimmick, is him, Damian Mysterio. And there's a couple of guys like that. Now, granted, they all have their gimmick personality of this and that, but they're more, I guess you can kind of see them more on a personal level than, here I got this crazy dentist coming out with these jagged teeth, and he's coming out to kick some butt.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think the other thing, too, is, I mean, if you look back at the wrestling matches from the 50s and 60s, it's funny because now everyone that's coming out, or 95%, these guys are cut, they're ripped, they're in great shape, whether it's natural or not, they sure fit the role. And you look back in the 50s, I was scrolling through my YouTube feed, and obviously the algorithm, once you start watching a couple wrestling videos, you see others. And I came across Hulk Hogan's match, and it was his first match as part of the WWF, and that was in November of '79. And he wrestled some guy named Harry Valdez. And
You don't know Harry Valdez?
I'm going to have to see if I can get a TTM from this cat. But Harry Valdez, like literally, I watched the match and Hogan came in second. I mean, this was going to be, Vince McMahon's bread and butter. You can tell Hogan came in and he was flexing. He almost had like a foot on this guy and 100 pounds. And Hogan was just ripped like he was.
Right.
And this Harry Valdez guy looked like, he was a school janitor that came in as a part-time job. And I just thought, yeah. And all Hogan did was just throw him around the ring and beat him senseless. And that was pretty much the end of the fight. Now I think, like you said, the gimmicks are still there, but I think there is a ton more agility. And I could say that the wrestlers are coming in probably more properly trained to wrestle back,
Right.
so it's like who's getting the advantage either way. So I just wanted to touch on that because I just found it very, very interesting how much it's changed over the years.
One thing I would definitely say, now granted, I don't have a lot of experience, if any, watching wrestling back then.
Mm-hmm.
But you definitely, and correct me if I'm wrong, you definitely didn't see any of like the Rey Mysterio types. I forget what they call them dudes. Like I keep on wanting to say Nacho Libre, but
I don't know what that Mexican term is for them. Yeah.
But, where they're flipping and doing all this.
Isn't it Lucho something? Yeah.
Lucho Libre? I don't know. Hey,
maybe.
Once again, guys, we haven't done it this video yet.
That's right.
Mike and I don't know all the terms. Okay, we're still learning.
We're coming to grips with like U.S. and Canadian, like knowing the whole, Mexican and Japan circuit. That's another phase. That's another phase.
Like you didn't see any of that stuff, and did you even see anyone go like on the top turnbuckle and jump off back then?
No, like the first guy that I can actually remember getting on the top of the top turnbuckle was Jimmy Superfly Snuka.
Oh yeah,
he would do that, and I mean he was in the 70s. I think I started watching him. I want to say mid to late 70s, but he would do it, and he would do the big splash, and Macho Man would do it. But I mean, hell, you look back on some of Undertaker's earlier matches, and he would hold the guy's arm from the top turnbuckle, and he'd walk along the rope and then come down and boom, like that's a big dude balancing on that rope. Now, granted, he's got the guy's arm.
Right, and he's using that for balance.
Yeah, but if he goes one slip, he's out the back end of the ring, right? So, I mean, these guys have to be well conditioned, well in shape, and well trained in what they're going to do from match to match, depending on their opponent. So,
yeah, definitely. I think kind of just looking at that whole conversation as a whole, it's definitely funny to see the difference of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and all the way till now.
Yeah.
Not only just the gimmicks, but their physiques.
Yeah. And the entire show, the production of it. I mean,
they're probably better athletes now than maybe ever before.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. But getting back to it, like the production of the show now, it's just like, it's every WrestleMania is like the Super Bowl, huge fanfare, light show, smokes, bombs going off, and most matches, whether you go see them
bombs going off.
Not you know what I mean, like fireworks. That's what I meant to say, not bombs. That's a little much. It may come to that. It may come to that. But you can go to a match, probably not right now because of the pandemic, but I mean, you could go to wrestling, in Toronto, Ontario, and it may not be like a major event. It's just a card, and they've got all the theatrics with it. So the whole production of it has just increased to give it that entertainment production and value, I feel.
Yeah, it's definitely its own beast these days.
Yeah.
So we'll move on to our next topic, and this was inspired by one of y'all leaving a comment in the last video, and we said, what would you like us to talk about in future videos? And someone wrote they wanted to talk about our favorite gimmicks of all time.
Yeah.
So Mike and I started, he picked 5 gimmicks. I picked 5 gimmicks. We haven't switched notes, so we're going to see who has what and all that. But I'll go ahead and get started.
Okay.
And I am going to kind of put these in order. Last time I did my Mount Rushmore in no particular order. I'm going to do this one in order from 5 to 1. So my 5th one, and all my guys for the most part, I guess, are kind of dark, like scary horror movies kind of thing. With the exception of one. But so my number 5 is going to be the Boogeyman. His name was Marty Wright. He always said, "I'm the Boogeyman, and I'm coming to get ya." Super dark gimmick. He did a lot of like Friday the 13th kind of knockoffs. He debuted in 2005. He was the dude that used to like have the worms like dripping out of his mouth. Like, dude, that ain't a gimmick. Those were like real freaking worms, man. That wasn't. That was the real deal, man. That should kind of tell you how far some of these guys go for their gimmick. Like, there's no way I'm putting a worm in my mouth, much less a whole fucking can of worms.
I don't know. It depends how much you're being paid per match, right?
That's a fact. Okay.
You do have a price.
Everyone has a price.
Exactly.
So that's my number 5. My number 4 is the Big Boss Man, Ray Traylor Jr. He's a 4-time hardcore champion. I did a little research on him, and he passed away in 2004 at the age of 41.
Wow.
From a heart attack. Yeah. And then another thing I thought was really cool about him was he was a corrections officer before he got into wrestling.
Right. So he already had the gimmick.
Right. So his gimmick was his job. And then I don't know if you remember this, but when he first came into wrestling, I almost said the league. We're such sports guys. But when he first came into wrestling, his manager was Slick.
Slick.
Yeah. And that's Ken Johnson, I believe his name is. And man, he was a smooth operator with the mouth, man. Slick was a good talker for sure.
That's awesome.
So number 3, I'm gonna go. Now there ain't nothing dark about this dude, but the Godfather, the Ho Train, Charles White. I've been told, like in real life, he is one of the nicest guys you could ever want to meet.
Yeah.
But I believe he came in as Papa Shango in not 2000, in 1992 and 93. And he was Papa Shango for a while, which I think is funny. I mean, and granted, he has another gimmick, and I'll get to that one here in a minute, but we went from Papa Shango to a pimp. his career. So it's like, man, you want to talk about opposite ends of the spectrum. I think it's hilarious when you think about Papa Shango turns into a pimp.
Yeah.
But after Papa Shango, I believe I read that he went and wrestled somewhere else for a little less than a year, and he came back as Kama.
Right.
And then he was part of the Nation of Domination and all that. I also read that he got into wrestling. Like, he never wanted to be a wrestler. Like a lot of these guys, it's their dream. He was actually a bartender at a bar, and it was quite frequented by wrestlers. And they're like, yo, man, you're freaking 6'7" with that body and those basically unique tattoos he has. Like, man, we need to hook you up and see if we can get you in here.
Right.
One thing led to another, and he came in as Papa Shango.
That's crazy.
So, that's crazy. Like, just to think, probably a normal night, he's at work passing out some drinks, and next thing you know, Papa Shango, and now a WWE Hall of Famer.
Unbelievable.
So,
yeah, I guess they get discovered, right?
I mean, you just never know what life throws at you sometimes, you know?
No doubt. No doubt.
My number 2 is Mankind or Mick Foley
Mick
or
Foley.
Cactus Jack or Dude Love or
Yeah.
my favorite, Saint Mick.
Saint Mick.
Yeah, and he debuted in 1983, which I thought was interesting. When I say debut, I don't mean like in WWF.
Right.
WWE, I just mean he got into wrestling then.
Right.
But man, like what a freaking tough SOB, man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Some of those matches, like that match he had with Undertaker, the Hell in a Cell, where
off the top of the
top, and then he freaking threw those tacks. I watched a documentary the other day on that match, and those were real tacks, man. That wasn't those nothing fake about those tacks.
Yeah,
he laid those tacks down, and he was trying to throw Undertaker on it, and Undertaker ended up throwing him on it. Like I'm talking all over his whole body, man.
That's
so
crazy.
Just incredible. And in that interview, it was funny because it showed Vince McMahon talking to him like after the match. Mick Foley is like on a gurney, man, getting all these tacks removed, and he's like, I want to thank you what you just did for the business. I don't ever want to see anything ever like that again.
No, I don't think we ever will. That was unreal, that match.
But like back to his gimmicks, like I remember when Mankind came in, and like if I remember correctly, because I was a kid, if I remember correctly, like there was a lead up to it. He didn't just show up at a wrestling event. It was like, Monday Night Raw, and they're like, who's this guy? And you see this creepy dude with a leather mask, and he's like pulling his hair out in a closet, and he's
right
around and
like he's some psych ward patient or something.
Man, and I'm like, 12, 13 at the time, and I'm dude, this is one of the scariest SOBs I've ever seen in my freaking life.
Absolutely.
And then I think it's funny he goes from one of the scariest dudes ever of Mankind, because remember when he first came in, he didn't have any comedy in his routine. And he went from that to Dude Love, where he's coming out freaking doing all this stuff, a big old chunky dude like us, and calling himself Dude Love. I think is I don't know who came up with Mankind to have these alter egos, but I think that's so freaking awesome.
Yeah, and he did them all well too. Like if I memory serves, I thought that Mick Foley was always one of those kids that I think there's YouTube videos that you can go hunt out of him doing backyard wrestling, doing stupid stuff like jumping off his parents' roof and landing on tables in the backyard and like hurting himself a lot of times, but knowing this is what I want to do in life. He wanted to be a wrestler.
Yeah, no, his pain tolerance must be up there for sure, man.
No doubt. No doubt at all.
One thumbtack in me, and I'm going to come unglued, much less a whole freaking bed of them.
Yeah.
And then my last one here, or my number 1, I would say this is probably my favorite gimmick of all time, is the Undertaker.
Right.
Mark Calloway started in 1987. And that's when he got into wrestling, and then he came into WCW, I think in '89 as Mean Mark.
Right.
But I watched the Undertaker documentary, which is I believe it's a 5 or 6 part documentary, and each part's about an hour. It's very, very good.
Right. But it's called The Last Ride, isn't it?
Yeah. So Vince McMahon came up with that gimmick, and he said he freaking called him up one day, and he talked about, you've seen this about a dead man and blah, blah, blah. It's like, man, hey, dude, I'm basically down for whatever. Like, let's do it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I remember, he came in so dark, and he had Paul Bear was his mouthpiece. Some of the guys that aren't the best at the like their little gimmick interviews and all that, they always give him a manager as a mouthpiece.
Absolutely.
And I think it's crazy how he started his career as this dark character that never talked, say rest in peace and like roll his eyes in the back of his head.
Oh, that was, I mean, you've got to imagine kids watching that when they seen that back in the day, they were probably just like couldn't believe it. couldn't believe what they were seeing.
You know, but he went through that, and then we got into the Attitude Era, and he said he thought his gimmick was going to die in the Attitude Era, and that's when he became the American Badass, where he came out riding the freaking hog.
Yeah,
Was
like he was a biker.
Yeah, a lot more vocal, and
Right,
you know,
right.
had bandanas tied on his head and all that stuff, and then somehow he was able to come back and make a hybrid of the Undertaker and American Badass character together,
Right.
Kind of to finish his career.
For sure.
Just so damn smart, man, with knowing wrestling and how wrestling fans' minds work. And
yeah,
I just think Mark Calloway is a freaking genius. Vince McMahon is obviously a genius to come up with so many gimmicks.
And the thing about Calloway too is he was very loyal to Vince and the WWE. He was, you know what, everything was about the brand, and that's what we're all drawing paychecks, and some people are drawing bigger than others. But he was that guy he did everything that Vince wanted for the brand to make it bigger, and he got it. He understood the showmanship of it. So
yeah, he says even in that interview, you know, he's like, I think I'm retired, but if Vince called me and asked me to do something, I'm there.
Yeah, because in that last ride, he discloses that he was so banged up that he would only do one match a year, and it was WrestleMania. Yeah, and he would just work out just to prepare for that one match. And it would just, he said, and then I'd probably be laid up for a few months, then probably have to have a surgery, and then I'd start rehabbing for the next WrestleMania. And I'm thinking, man, what kind of life?
You think like how sports guys, and which I don't know who we're full, and you and I are sports guys, but you hear terms like, oh, you'll never see another Mickey Mantle, you'll never see another Mike Trout, you know, you'll never see another King Griffey Jr.
Right.
I mean, you'll never see another freaking Undertaker. You know,
no.
Someone that had the longevity through decades.
Yeah.
You know, not a decade, not two, but decades.
Yeah.
Just as popular was. I mean, he freaking ruled the locker room with an iron fist, you know.
He did.
He was the head motherfucker.
He was judging
The head guy, if you will. Sorry.
But you're right. He was judge and jury in that locker room, right?
Yeah.
He called the shots, and I think there was was it called the Bones and Skull Crew? BSK. I'm pretty sure it's called Bones and Skull Crew. If you look,
he has a tattoo on his stomach, I think, that says that.
Bones and Skull Crew, and there's a bunch of wrestlers that all have it, and they were all, and everyone wanted to know what that was, and he was like, we're a group of guys that used to play dominoes in the back. That's what the BSK was for, apparently. So I'm just like, everyone thought it was some sort of gang or some sort of what's going on. Because there were some other wrestlers, and I can't remember who it is, but it's Bones and Skull Crew.
So that's my top 5: Undertaker, Mankind, Godfather, Big Boss Man, and Boogeyman. But I do have 2 honorable mentions.
Okay.
So Val Venus, who has the porn star gimmick.
Yeah.
And I've talked about this in a past video of mine that, you know, being, I don't know what I was, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Sure.
And like this dude coming out with all these ladies and all these sexual innuendos, like, oh man, I just thought that was the craziest thing.
Shaking it.
Like, can you imagine that on today's TV? Like, it would never freaking happen, dude.
No, you couldn't do it.
And I think now my son, my 10-year-old Landon, is really getting into wrestling, like really getting into it. And it's like he will never see some of the crazy ass gimmicks that we got to see. And then my other honorable mention, and then I'll pass it over to you, is Sergeant Slaughter. You know, his gimmick was, and it was around Desert Storm, you know, and everyone was, you know, proud to be an American, and he was this freaking
hero,
blue-blooded American hero through and through, and
right.
then he freaking turned, dude.
Right. Right.
And it was like, oh my God, like you just slapped America in the face. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That would
Yeah.
be my
Those
two
are-
honorable mentions.
that's a great list.
Take it away, Mike.
Well, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do a countdown from 5 down to 1. You had like loads of info for your. You did some serious research. I did a little bit, but nothing like yours. But I would have to say mine from mostly the 70s that I grew up watching and I used to like. It was Chief Jay Strongbow, and he was a native Indian. He's from the U.S. His real name was Luke Carpa, I think was his real name, and the thing about him at the time was you won't remember this, but some older guys will. Is the native Indian became a symbol in the U.S. because back in the day there used to be this commercial for pollution and littering, and it was like talking about how littering's bad, and this family would drive by and throw out a bag of garbage out of their car, and it would hit this native Indian, and it would pan up, and the native was like, he had a tear running down his face. So I think the whole Chief Jay Strongbow came to his height when that commercial was out. I knew he was popular before that, but that really blew him up. And it was always great because he would go back and forth. He'd be winning, he'd be losing, and then it was almost like predated the Hulk Hogan when you hit him and he just started shaking his head. Well, with Chief Jay Strongbow, he'd start doing the shake, and then all of a sudden he'd be doing like an Indian war dance around, and then he'd come up with flying knees and drop kicks.
I think Tatanka got that from him
He
because
did.
Tatanka used to do that.
Yeah, he did the exact same thing, and he kind of looked up to Chief Jay Strongbow, and I think Chief Jay Strongbow, after his wrestling years, went into like a teaching at wrestling schools and stuff like that. So he would be my number 5.
Fun fact, I don't want to cut you off, but Tatanka inducted Strongbow into the Hall of Fame.
There you go. That's where probably there was some mentorship throughout Tatanka's career. Number 4, not a wrestler, but you mentioned him already, was Paul Bearer. I thought Paul Bearer was great.
Dude.
He was complimented the Undertaker so well, and he was this creepy white-faced dude, like he was almost half dead carrying around the Undertaker's urn. And a lot of people don't know it, but years before, the Missing Link had a manager when he first came out in the NWA, and it was Paul Bearer, but he was known as like Perry Percival or something, and he had like blonde white hair. He was a little thinner, and he had been around the whole time, and the fact that he got to hook up and be the Undertaker's spokesperson or manager or valet, as you will, that just, he gained in popularity.
So I watched, like I said, that Last Ride documentary. I think it was like last week, the very beginning of last weekend and last week. I kind of watched. It took a little while, and it was one of those things. You ever heard the term "I was today years old" when I found out? Yeah, I had one of those moments during that interview or during that documentary, and I felt like a complete idiot. I had no. This is gonna make me sound like a freaking jackass. I didn't get the whole thing of Paul Bear was like
the coffin.
Paul Bear, like someone passed away, and they explained that in the documentary, and I was like, dude, I thought his name was just Paul. Like, yeah, my name's Paul Bear, and freaking blah blah.
Yeah, I hear you.
I sat here at this desk, and I'm like, oh man.
Now
I was today years old when I realized it had a double meaning.
So after Paul Bear, I'd have to say number 3 was the Iron Sheik. I know when he teamed with Volkov, the Russian, but I just used to love him because back in 1985, 84, 85, Bruce Springsteen came out with the album Born in the USA with the title track. And Hulk Hogan used to come out with that, with the American flag and Born in the USA. And the Iron Sheik would just put it down. He was one of these guys, like his thing was, you say born in the USA, I say Iran, Iran, Iran. And, at the time, Iran was just like, Iran was, the Iran hostage affair was in 1980. By the way, the Canadians got your American hostages out. I don't know, little history there for you guys if you didn't know.
Keep going.
Anyways, yeah, so I always thought his gimmick was good. His name is actually Hussein Vaziri, and he actually wrestled in the Olympics in the 60s, and I can't remember which one. He was a Greco-Roman wrestler.
Okay.
And started teaching after his wrestling days, and then somehow got hooked up into professional wrestling as it is, and brought the gimmick on. And I just thought he did a great portrayal of it. I've watched many documentaries about him, and I've seen interviews with his wife and his two daughters, and his daughters are like, he's just dad. It's all just a show, right? He's just dad. He gives us stupid dad jokes, drives us crazy, and just regular Joe. So that would be my number 3. My number 2 is Mr. Ray Ferris, also known as the Honky Tonk Man. I'm cool, I'm cocky, and I'm bad.
Oh, who?
Yeah, he was, he came around. I'm not sure when he debuted in wrestling, or at least, he may have had that gimmick for a while. I don't know the history of it, and I have to look it up. I don't know if that was a gimmick thing that was brought on when he was brought into the WWF/WWE, but it was great because it always came out with that guitar. Once a month, someone ate that guitar. They were getting beat over the back with it. You know what I mean? And I don't know. He's just, for me, like the epitome of entertainment. He'd be up there trying to, and I think you and I talked about it one time off camera.
That was on the last show.
Yeah, he wasn't strumming. He was just moving his hands up along the guitar. It's like
fingers were never on the strings. And
he couldn't even air guitar properly, right? Yeah, he's just going around, right? Yeah, so that's my number 2. And my number 1 has to be, without a doubt, and this is only because I just finished watching a documentary on him, was George the Animal Steele. George the Animal Steele, I watched the entire documentary, and I had no idea about this, but George the Animal Steele was dyslexic in high school, and he was really struggling with marks, and he was a great football player. He did shot put on the track team, played basketball, did all these things. And Michigan State wanted him to, they offered him a full scholarship. But the problem was, about a year before he was offered the scholarship, in his senior year, he got his girlfriend pregnant at the time, who turned out to be his wife of many years, Pat. And by the way, his real name is Jim Myers. Jim Myers was George the Animal Steele. He went to Michigan State on a football scholarship, got himself into a little bit of trouble at school because he liked to horse around, and he struggled with school, and marks were tough, and he ended up leaving Michigan State. But then he went to another college they took him off scholarship, but he finished out his career at Michigan State and got a Bachelor of Arts degree, and became a teacher. He became a very well-respected high school teacher in Michigan, won state titles in wrestling, football with his clubs. He was really good. But he says at the time in the 70s and that, teaching didn't pay a lot of money. So I had to get a side gig. And he decided he was going to become a wrestler. And he met some guy. They had some sort of meeting. And they said, you're going to have to drive to Windsor, Ontario, across the Michigan border. And there's a school there. You're going to learn the moves. And his wife said, you're crazy. It's going to cost you 25 cents each way to use the tunnel to get to Canada. And you're not even going to make that back, all the quarters you spend at the tunnel. Well, he went out for his first match and he made I think he said $30 or $40 for his first match. And he said he was making $40 a week teaching, or $40 a day teaching at the time. And he had 3 kids at home, and he went and did his first match was 6 minutes long, and he made $40. And from there he was hooked. And he
going to that match and your English teacher walks out like that, you'd be
yeah. Well, it was funny because in the documentary it explains fully that he said he wanted to hide it for the longest time. So he always wore the mask. And he always wore the mask. You never knew who he was. But then things changed and they wanted him to take the mask off and become this George the Animal Steele. And a lot of people know in the 80s, part of his gimmick was he fell in love with Miss Elizabeth.
Yep.
Yeah. So he was always, Macho Man and him were always going at it. And he said wrestling just got him to where he needed to be, because financially in 1985, I think he said, that's when I knew I can retire from wrestling or from teaching, because wrestling, I was getting paid, as he says, thousands and thousands of dollars. And we were getting a cut of all the merchandise. So the action figures and the cards and everything we were getting a cut on. And he said it was the greatest thing. And he just had a great time with it. So in watching that documentary, I really looked at him as someone, wow, I didn't know that he was a school teacher for that long. And I mean, he did the first WrestleMania and he was still a school teacher. Now, with no mask. So you imagine the biggest spectacle ever, WrestleMania 1. People are like, there's our coach, there's our teacher, and he's wrestling away. That's fantastic. When I heard that story, I was like, wow, that's incredible. Great gimmick that he portrayed. So yeah, so those are my top 5.
That's a good list.
I didn't really consider. I think what I did was my honorable mentions. I just cut it right down to 5. But
man,
huh?
I said, you're fine. You don't need honorable mention.
Yeah. So, but there you have it. That's my.
That was a good list. That was fun.
Yeah.
So thanks for that idea of the top gimmicks of what do we think. And with that being said, we'll move into the additions and pickups that we've got since the last video. If any of y'all have any more ideas, by all means, Mike and I definitely need help keeping this stuff going. So if y'all have ideas, please write them down below, man. Because not only is he reading them, I'm reading them, and we talk about them quite a bit. So I guess I can go ahead.
I think you should start, as I'm excited to see what you got, because I think I know some of the things that you got.
Okay, I don't know if we talked about the Razor Ramon action figure on the last video or not, so I'll try to make it short and sweet. Razor Ramon is, like I've said multiple times, one of my all-time favorite wrestlers. And I went to the Target right down the road, and they had an Elite Collection Razor Ramon Legends figure. There was only one. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be a grown-ass man buying freaking action figures for me. If it's for my kids, that's one thing. I'm not going to start that shit for me.
Yes. So you went to get Razor Ramon. He was gone, right?
So my wife and I, last night, around 8:30 or so, I was like, man, let's go to Target and see if they got any wrestling stuff.
Yeah.
And I was blown away. She was like, okay. And I'm like,
okay.
I'm like, did I say we were going to go pick up a bottle of wine? Why is she so freaking excited? And sure as shit, man, she came with me and we walked to the toy section and There was no Razor Ramones.
Yeah.
But there was about freaking 4 Bobby the Brain Heenans in the Weasel outfit.
In the Weasel outfit.
And I did watch this match the other day. I think it was just yesterday.
Nice.
And this was him, and I believe it was the Ultimate Warrior.
Right.
Got in a match, and it was in the late 80s. And he ended up freaking wearing this Weasel outfit at the end of the match. And man, he freaking made a total Bobby Heenan spectacle out of it.
Yeah.
So I picked the one in the best condition.
Nice.
We're going to keep it. Actually, it talks about that match on the back. But I'm going to keep it in this thing, and I'm not going to go all out. I don't think. Hell, the last video.
I think you will. I think you will. That's my prediction. You'll get more. You'll get more.
Last video, I said I wasn't going to do it, and here I am. Like,
so I caved.
So the plan is just to pick them up as I go to Walmart or Target, and
Absolutely.
there's a wrestler that I like or
throw them in with the grocery order. Who cares, right?
Oh God, man, I hope I don't start getting freaking. This is the last thing I need is another. I'm already getting into these wrestling cards, which is so expensive. I don't need.
Yeah.
This was $20 for this little booger, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So that's that.
Yeah.
I also purchased. I put in the NFL TTM collectors group that I was willing to trade NFL autographs for wrestling cards or signed wrestling cards.
Nice.
And there was a ton of people wrote me. And so I ended up getting this set in a trade. Or no, I actually purchased this. And this is the 2007 Topps Chrome. And now it is Chrome, so pardon the glare.
Looks like the 63 Topps baseball set.
Oh, look at that's the scary guy in the middle. That's the Boogeyman.
There he is, the Boogeyman.
But very, very cool cards. The guy said he opened a case, and as he was going through the case,
made
the set, put them right in the sleeve. And so I've pulled some of these out.
Yeah.
And anyone that has dealt with Topps Chrome at all knows that they're easy to scratch.
For sure.
Man, these things are crispy, dude. Like,
how many cards in the set again, Garrett?
Shoot. Let's see here. What do we got here? 99.
99, eh? Nice.
Yep. And then like these last 2 pages, I think, are super cool. It's kind of a different design.
Oh yeah.
There's Papa Shango down here at the bottom. We talked about him here. Dark Clown. He's one of my all-time favorites. I don't talk much about.
That Andre the Giant card looks like the 54 baseball with the K-line rookie.
Yep. Yeah. And these are kind of another subset in there as well.
Very nice.
So
very cool.
Got those. So I might actually send off some of these to Grayton, but I haven't quite decided just yet. And then once again, one of y'all freaking brought something to my attention, and it made me spend 4 figures. One of you freaking awesome viewers hit me up on Facebook and was like, "Hey Garrett, there's a guy selling some 1982, 1983 All-Star cards that are signed. You might want to check it out."
Yeah.
And of course, I go over there like I'm freaking Mr. Moneybags, and how much to buy them all?
Right.
Like I freaking have it like that. And next thing you know, I ended up buying them all. And then after I sent the PayPal, I was like, oh, sure. I hope Mrs. CardCutter doesn't find out, dude.
She knows about the $20 Bobby Heenan, but not the other.
Let's just say she found out, okay?
Yeah.
But, we'll just go through these. I don't want to go through too fast because, I mean, they're freaking awesome, man.
Nice.
But Jake the Snake, Jimmy Hart.
Beautiful. Look at those.
83. I got a couple Tully Blanchards.
Very nice.
And all of this, like I said, all of this was one big purchase, one big lot. I bought every card.
Hacksaw.
That the gentleman was selling.
That's amazing.
Got a Greg the Hammer Valentine, and then that's Coco Beware.
Yeah. What was his
Sweet Brown Sugar,
Sweet
man.
Brown Sugar? That's right.
That's your favorite.
Yeah. And Frankie.
So
Very nice.
we're almost done. We're about halfway
Man,
through, but I mean, these are just too awesome.
that's amazing.
So
How many cards in the whole lot?
31 I ended up getting.
No
I
kidding.
don't have two of them. There was a Chris Benoit that's PSA DNA slabbed, and his autograph is very tough to find.
Right.
And Jerry the King Lawler 1982 Wrestling All-Star, which that's my third one now signed.
Very nice. Those are Angelo Mosca.
That's your dude.
Angelo Mosca.
Look at that, Bill Dundee. I mean, I seen this lot and I just about freaked out. I'm glad I had some extra funds on me because,
Yeah.
I mean, this is Harley Race, another Ted DiBiase.
Dead. Yep.
And then here's the last two, which is so cool. King Kong Bundy and then the Jesse the Body Ventura sticker.
Those are awesome.
So
those stickers, are they the duplicate side ones too? Those stickers?
Yeah, this one, so it's only a sticker on one side.
Right.
On the other side is basically a puzzle piece.
Puzzle piece. Gotcha.
So, I mean, it almost looks like they took a picture of your abs right there. So
it wouldn't be my abs. I can assure you of that.
I mean, we just did a video not too long ago, and so needless to say, I kind of went a little crazy with the pickup. So
yeah,
I don't know when the next video will be, but I can probably imagine it won't have this much stuff.
Yeah. Well,
so, what do you got, buddy?
So I released a YouTube video, like a part one. I think when I was telling you, I was rummaging through some boxes, came across all my wrestling cards, and I found the 1991 Impel wrestling cards. And I don't want to spoil everything, but I'm just going to show, in the first batch of 7, I ended up pulling four different Ric Flair cards. And the thing with Ric Flair in the set, for most of the wrestlers in there's about 8 or 9 cards of each. It's a 162 card set.
Oh, wow.
So I mean, sorry, I'm just getting. So you've got that Flair, you've got an action Ric Flair, another action, and a third. And there's like 4 others that, I'm looking at sending some of these for Grayton. And, when they get back, keep them in my PC. And, yeah. And then what else do I got? I got 1990 Classic with Miss Elizabeth.
Oh, yeah.
And an 87 with the Macho Man. That's 87 O-Peachy. Extras from the set. Couple other 90 classics that I thought were pretty cool. Andre the Giant. And then this one's great. I thought you'd like this. That's $1 Million Man shoving some money in his opponent's mouth. That's what he did, right? Just shoved it right in there. And then from the 87 set, just a ton, like Honky Tonk Man, gotta have in there. And these are cut so terribly. This is as crispy as it gets with these cards, and I'm not sure whether I wanted to send it away because I wouldn't put a qualifier on it, but I'd probably get, if that was centered, I'd probably get a 9, but it'd probably be like a 6 or a 7 because of it.
Then you'd be pissed.
Yeah, exactly. Those guys pissed me off. And then, 5 Hulk Hogan cards from the 87 O-Peachy set, and still the champion. And then you've got Listening to Hulkamania and Champ in the Ring. This is all from the same set. We both have it. And then this one, American Made.
Yeah. I have the set because you gave it to me.
Yeah. And this one here, I like this one a lot, doing the flexing.
Cool. That one actually looks a little better centered.
It is. I've got about 8 of those, and that's the best one that I pulled out for Grayton. So, And then the other thing I picked up, but it hasn't come in yet. I got a sweet deal on a 1999 Topps WCW / NWO Nitro base set. It's a 72 card set. It's coming in the same as your Chrome. It's coming in the sleeves, no binder, but purchased that off a guy in Montreal. All he does on eBay is just wrestling stuff. So yeah, I'm excited to get that in, and I'll show it off maybe on the next time we do it. But yeah, again, like I want to echo what you were saying earlier. We got a lot of feedback, a lot of guys like it, and I know you've got a request for someone to be on with us, as did I.
Yeah.
And I think we're gonna schedule those guys in. It's just all about timing and stuff like that, but we're gonna get those two guys in, and yeah, like I think the comments keep the content coming. Something for us to learn, something for us to speak about, and I'm really enjoying it. Like it's one of those things where it's just fun to get it, and
Walking down memory lane,
it really is, and I'm finding a lot of my spare time. I try to watch as many people that I'm subscribed to on YouTube, and I want to try and do that, but I'm trying to fit in watching old wrestling, watching documentaries, learning about these guys, because there's so much more to them. And, it's just fun learning about the whole wrestling entertainment business. So
yeah, definitely. I thought I was just going to pick up some cards.
Yeah.
When this started, and we would talk about some stories. I honestly thought we would get 2 or 3 of these shows out. And granted, this is only our second one, but
yeah,
I mean, you and I talk every day, and
yeah,
I mean, there hasn't been a time yet in the past month that it wasn't involving wrestling of some type.
it always, it's small talk, and it's like, hey, I watched this documentary on George the Animal Steele, and you're telling me, oh, I watched this, and you tell me how it's just like, what, it's making the hobby fun again, in this turmoil of time where, card prices are so expensive. And I mean, right now, I mean, it's not super expensive. I mean, some of them can be, like
Right.
a Hogan rookie and stuff like that. Andre the Giant, they can be, but just to have some examples of cards from back in the day is a lot of fun. Yeah,
No doubt. So we'll go ahead and close this one out. That was fun.
you bet.
Yeah. I had a great time. So we said it a couple times. If you have an idea, please put it in the comment section down below. If you have any feedback, good, bad, indifferent, let us know, man. Let us know.
Absolutely.
This is definitely, we're growing here. This is a moving project. We definitely are far from experts. Heck, we're far from being mediocre.
We're far from being below mediocre.
Until next time, adios, be safe. Bye-bye. Toodles.
See you guys.